The following program is brought to you by the Intergalactic Educational Audio Network.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of And So the Mind Reels podcast. I am your host, Lee Mueller. Today, I am going to answer the question, how did I end up in the performing arts? I mean, seriously, when I was a little kid sitting out in the backyard making mud pies, did I think, hey, I want to grow up and I want to be on the stage. I want to be an actor on the stage. I want to be in a movie. I want to be in a comedy group. I want to write plays for a living. Is this anything that I even possibly considered? If it was, and I did it, how can you do it? Again, thank you so much for listening. I'll be right back. Thank you so much for coming back and still listening. I do appreciate you. Now, this really is, I would say, a companion piece to one I did early in the podcasting episodes. Going back, if you look back, there was an episode called Did I Always Want to Be a Playwright? And then there was a part 2 of How Did I Become a Playwright? And I thought, you know what? Thinking about that or listening back, I thought I'm kind of putting the cart before the horse, because before I even sat down and tried to write a play, there were some steps I took. There were some things that led me up to that I kind of need to explain or tell you how I got there, because I thought, there might be other people out there who are interested in the performing arts and different facets of it, and they kind of want to know, well, how do you do it? How do you get into a play? How do you become an actor in a play? How do you do these things? Well, I'm going to tell you how I did it, and they're quite easy steps that you can follow. So let's rewind it all the way back to the analogy I use, being a little kid out in the backyard making mud pies. I didn't really do that, but that's just kind of a nice image, isn't it? I was fortunate enough that my mother's kind of magic dust rubbed off on me. When she was young, she wanted to be a model, and things didn't work out for her, but she ended up working for a lot of the major motion picture companies. Now, when I say that, I grew up in St. Louis in the Midwest. No, we weren't in Hollywood. She didn't work for the major motion picture companies in Hollywood, but a distributorship in St. Louis. Major cities had distributorships. So when MGM or United Artists or Fox or whoever had a new movie coming out, they had little satellite offices all over the country that would book movies into cinemas and theaters. My mom worked there doing that. She booked movies into the different cinemas that were in the region. And she did this for MGM. I think she worked for United Artists. And I would go with her sometimes down to the office when she'd go in and get to meet the people, and I'd see these posters and the trailers and all the movie promotional materials that they had, and I'd get to go to sneak previews and screenings and different things. So I kind of grew up around that kind of that kind of environment, watching the Academy Awards and the whole thing. And then she went to work for the actual cinemas themselves. So in my later years, in my teens, all the way up to I was about 18, 19, high school, she worked in cinemas. She managed cinemas. So I would get to go and hang out there and watch movies over and over and be a part of that whole world. And that got me intrigued with that aspect. Films and studying films and wanting to be a movie director. I wanted to make movies, and I did. When I was 10 or 11, I think, I got a Super 8 movie camera from JCPenney, and you get these cartridges, and I just went wild. My friends and I would go out on the weekends and get a bottle of ketchup and do like some shoot 'em ups. I did my version of The Godfather. I was influenced by Clockwork Orange. I mean, I saw, everything that came out. So there's all these things going into my brain and all these influences. And Sam Peckinpah was big at the time, and Violence, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, The Wild Bunch. So, that was my major influence, and that's what I wanted to do. But, I'm 10 years old. How do you become that in St. Louis in the Midwest? Become, Stanley Kubrick? How do you become the next great film director? Well, you got to wait. So I bided my time and kind of just paid attention and tried to do very well in school. An intriguing thing is that across the street from where I went was the high school. The high school had a theater department, and they would do a comedy, a drama, and a kids play every year. That was their season. When they did the children's play, the middle schoolers and the elementary kids, that I was a part of, would go across the street one afternoon and watch them do, Hansel and Gretel or Winnie the Pooh or whatever show they were doing. So I thought, okay, now when I get across the street and I get in high school, I need to do that. That's what I need to do, because I'm going to be a director. I have to understand acting. I have to know all about that and get into that world in order to be a director. So that's what happened. When I was a junior, you could audition for the dramatic class. It was called dramatics at the time. It didn't have like a name like Theater and Me or something. It was just dramatics. So you had to audition in order to get into the class. So I had to do a little short monologue, and what I did was I memorized Robert Blake's speech from the end of In Cold Blood. I know it's kind of weird, but that was my audition. So I did Robert Blake's In Cold Blood speech, and I made it into the class. We'd have auditions, people in the class would have to audition. I think I talked about this before. And first play I was ever in was called The Miracle Worker, about Helen Keller. I played 3 different parts. I played the doctor at the beginning. I played the Agnagnos, who sends the teacher off to see Helen Keller, and I did various voices. So I was like, well, this is kind of cool. I vividly recall my first time ever walking out on the stage. I was terrified. I think I was visibly shaking. But when I started saying the lines, all of that, there's some sort of something in your brain, you can look it up, that takes over, a chemical that's released in your brain, and you completely forget that I'm in front of hundreds of people. I'm on the stage and people are watching. All that just fades away. And you just relax, and you relax in the role. And I thought, man, I kind of like this. And then the next play, I was cast as a lead. It was The Gazebo. And then we did a children's show. And then we did Diary of Anne Frank and The Mousetrap by Agatha Christie. I was fortunate enough that I guess they thought I was good enough that there was an offshoot, an alumni community theater group who did plays in a place called Kirkwood suburb of St. Louis. So I was asked to perform with them as well. So I did shows with them while I'm still in high school. I'm doing community theater. I'm doing, You Can't Take It With You. And we did the Shadow Box and various shows. So acting kind of became a thing. I was like, well, you know what? I kind of like this, and this is kind of fun. I think maybe I'll do this for a while. So by the time I got to go to college, I went, okay, now, film is what I wanted to do. That's right. So I signed up for Filmmaking 101, and lo and behold, the class was filled. I couldn't take it. So I looked at, okay, well, they have acting, they have theater. Well, all right, I know how to do that. So let me do that until I can get into the filmmaking department. So I went in, took acting in college, and then started doing shows, and then started doing more community theater, and I kind of got just pulled into the theater world because, I liked it. It was fun. I was good at it. And that's how I got into the performing arts aspect of theater. I was biding my time until I could do what I really wanted to do, and that was direct movies. That's a way you can get into something sometimes, is by not intending to. You can, suddenly I want to be a photographer, but I want to understand painting and composition and colors. So you start, buying some oils and painting some portraits and painting some landscapes. And suddenly, hey, those are really good. How much do you want for that? Oh, well, I wasn't selling. I was just, okay, well, $20. Does that sound all right? And then you're an artist, you're painting, but you wanted to be a photographer. Or maybe you wanted to be a painter, and then you get into photography to understand composition, and you end up selling all of your photos instead. So there are, like I said, ways that you can blend over into other creative fields. You're like, maybe you like building things, and then because this happened to a couple of friends of mine in high school, they like shop class, and they wanted to be construction guys, and we needed people to help build sets in the theater department. So they would come over and help build the sets, and then all of a sudden they got involved in the theater world and started doing stagecraft stuff and union stagehand things, and a lot of them are making money doing that work when they started out. So you get the gist of it. You can start out doing something and blend over into something else. I finally got my toes in the motion picture world because an actress that I knew who was doing some major stuff said, "Hey, I hear they're going to shoot some movie in St. Louis. It's called Escape from New York." I was like, wait, it's called Escape from New York, but they're filming it in St. Louis. Yeah, it's cheaper to do it here. And there's areas of St. Louis that look like New York. And they're doing this casting call. They're looking for some crazy people to be these convicts and what have you. So I'd recommend showing up at the audition looking kind of scraggly. So, I didn't shave for a week. I worked some kind of like ratty clothes. And basically what it was what they call a cattle call, where they just take like groups of 10 into a room one at a time. So you got 10 people. They go into the room. They just kind of take a look at you and they go, you, this guy, and her. Okay, thank you very much. And that's how I got a part as an extra in Escape from New York. I just walked in the room looking like I did. And they went, oh, yeah, this guy. And so I worked for 3 nights late at night. Got to work with Kurt Russell and Isaac Hayes and Ernest Borgnine, and got to chase Kurt Russell down the street. It was a great experience because I finally got my toes. I was in front of the camera. I wanted to be behind the camera, but I got to watch John Carpenter work. I got to watch him behind the camera and how he would set up shots, and I got to learn a whole lot. Finally, long story short, I was able to go back. I getting involved from being an actor, being involved in films. People would need people to be in films, student films. And then I went into the 48-hour project when that started as an actor, and finally went, you know what? I want to be on the other side of the camera. So I created my own group, my own production company, and finally was able to start writing movies, directing movies, little, student things, but 48-hour film. We got awards there and did very well. So I finally was able to get to where I wanted to be through a very long and winding road, getting into acting that eventually led to filmmaking, and then back to the acting, which eventually led to joining an improv comedy troupe where I was able to write little sketches and do some improv and flex my wings there, which led me to go and become a part of a murder mystery company where I could do improv and some acting. And I ended up writing murder mysteries for them and became a playwright. Kind of a long and winding story that, looking back over it, it's pretty much all about me. Hey, look at me. But the point of that was talking about me was to show you, to illustrate how it can happen. You're sitting there and you're thinking, man, I that sounds really cool. I wonder how would you get into a play? How would you do a play? Well, it's like I said, it's that weird kind of osmosis thing. There are lots of community theaters groups all over the country because I talk to them all the time. It's what I do. They have people, they need people constantly. They need people to work props. They need people to come in, open the place up, and they need people to help build sets, and they need all sorts of things. So you can start out small. You can start out just volunteering for your local theater group to help them out. Then you start to get to know them. Then you kind of see what kind of shows they're going to do. Then if you feel comfortable, maybe the next time they have auditions, maybe you want to try an audition. I've seen it happen all the time. I knew people that came in just volunteering, costumes, and then next season they're on stage in a major role. Just because you want to get your toes kind of wet, you kind of want to feel it out and see what it's like. I recommend starting small. That's what I did. I wanted to be a filmmaker. I started out small, getting a small part in a high school production, and that's how I started writing. I wrote a small sketch for a comedy group and then got a little bit longer and a little bit longer. But if you get into anything in the, let's call it the peripheral area of what you're interested in, and it could be anything. You could want to be a ballerina. You could be, want to paint. You could want to, whatever you want to do. One thing you could really do is just take a class. You can take an acting class, a painting class, photography class, dance class. There's, extended adult education things you can do where, if you're not going to go away to a major university to major in it, you can just kind of dip your toes in the water, just doing something small on that scale. See if you like it. See if it's something that you want to do. See if you like, photography, if you like art, if you like dancing, if you like recording, if you're a musician, you can take lessons and learn that. You could run sound for a band. You can, roadie band, help them set up equipment to kind of get a feel for that world. And you get to know people, you make connections. And that's how basic it's going to happen. So many people think that, well, I'm going to just go and this is what I'm going to do. And, some people it does work for. Some people, I'm going to go to Hollywood. I'm going to be a star. Maybe 1 out of 1,000, it happens for them. Okay. Not all the time. That's not how it's going to be. I'm not going to write for a TV series, or I'm not going to write the great American novel or the next blockbuster film. I got to start small. I got to start in some area. Now, there are some great motivational quotes that I came across that really tied into this. And I think this was leading me to make this particular podcast. There's one I read. It was like 3 rules for life. If you don't go after what you want, you'll never have it. If you don't ask, the answer will always be no. If you don't step forward, you will remain in the same place. Now, you can go online and find thousands of things like that, but that really speaks. Unless you try something, you're not going to know. Say you do want to go into theater, you want to be an actor, and you find a community theater group, and you go in and you help them out, and you go through the whole process, and you think, wow, this is really not what I thought it was at all. I don't really like these people. They're backstabbers. They're horrible people. I don't want to have anything to do with it. Well, you learned. You found out, and you can go on to the next thing. Or you love it, and you are the lead role the next season. Now, here comes a little spoiler, a little warning. If you love the idea of something, be very careful, because I've met a lot of people who just absolutely love the idea of being, X, Y, or Z. But that's all they do, and that's all they talk about, and they never take the step to try to do it. They just love the idea of it, and that's the world they live in. Also, kind of a side effect of that is I know people who have a lot of projects, a lot of irons in the fire, if you will, and they never get done. And what happens? Well, there's a proven thing where your brain thinks, since you talk night and day about this project, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is what's going to happen, that your brain, for some reason, thinks you've done it. And you have this completion syndrome. And then you become stagnant. You've never actually made the blockbuster movie, or written the book you were going to make, or painted the portrait, or composed the, great album you were going to make, because you talk about it all the time. And for some reason, the chemicals in your brains rewire your synapses, and you think you have, and you just can't ever complete anything. I know many people who are stuck in this syndrome, and it's been 10 years since they were going to, let me read that thing that they wrote. And, I got the first sentence. Well, that's great. Just warning to you. It's wonderful to talk about stuff to people about what you're going to do, but just be really, really careful and don't mess your brain chemicals up by making it think you're done. That's just a weird little thing I wanted to pass on. Probably not too many people would talk about that, but I will. One more bit of sage advice, and this one actually comes from the good book. And this is a lot like the 3 rules of life I told you, but this is spiritual, and this actually comes from Matthew, and it's this. Keep asking, and it will be given to you. Keep searching, and you will find. Keep knocking, and the door will be open to you. Basically, even the wise apostles way back when even knew that if you don't try something, you're never going to know. There's that quote from John Greenleaf Whittier that said, "For all sad words of tongue and pen, the saddest are these, it might have been." I mean, you can sit around at the end of your life and just think, man, I wonder what would have happened if I had just done this. I wonder if I had just tried to do that, if I had auditioned for that, or if I'd wrote that story. You know, don't be that. Don't be the sad it might have been person, please. Life's too short for it might have beens. Just be. Go out there and try it. Start small, like I said. Start here and you might end up over there, kind of like I did. I was going to be Stanley Kubrick and I became, Agatha Christie. It's kind of weird, but I mean, you never know what's going to happen, and you might enjoy it. You might have a great time. You might live a really fulfilled life. I know, we got kind of deep. It kind of went really deep, didn't it? Okay, well, all right, let's lighten stuff up and think about what we'll do next time. I'll bring some crayons and you bring some paper and we'll get some glue and make something of ourselves. How about that? All right. Till next time, go out there and do it. And then let me know what happened, okay?